Well, friends, welcome. It's so good to have you. And the neat thing is, in the wonders of the 21st century, in God's miracles that allow His Word to spread over the whole earth, we are not alone. I know we at least have some friends from Wisconsin, and as well as many others who are going to be joining us. And so just try to imagine, obviously we have this nice group here, but there really are like-minded students of many ages from what I've seen, ages right in your ages, as well as we have some adults, just like the Andersons, who are here with us, and we're all joining together to learn. And I just think it's such a neat thing. We'll pray. I think we're all trying to follow our Savior, and that this idea of we're two or three or four or five or six or seven, or 20, as it might be today, or 40 around the globe are gathered together in my name. There I will be also. And that's a really sacred promise that we can enjoy something of the Spirit of Christ as we come here today. Welcome. What's your name?
Ezra.
Hello, Ezra. I'm Mr. Gentile. It's nice to meet you. Well, before we do too much more, we will start with a prayer. Now that I've just done a little welcome, and we'll say each other's names, maybe something that we enjoy. But I've looked around. I haven't seen any hymn books, but I feel that it would be important to sing today. Would we be able to sing your favorite patriotic hymn? Would that be all right? Because I feel that this is an appropriate time to do that. Is there anyone who would just like to offer a suggestion for us? They're all wonderful. One from the hymn book. Please.
America the Beautiful.
America the Beautiful. Okay, wonderful. And would you like to lead us in that?
Sure.
Okay, great. And then we'll just all sing along and let's do our best singing. And then after that, what about Rachel? Would you be willing to offer a prayer for us?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
And then pick the note and
You have like anything? Wait.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty upon the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Thank you. Beautiful.
Our dear Father in heaven, we thank Thee for this day. We thank Thee that we can gather here to learn about American history, and please bless us with Thy Spirit that we may learn to our full abilities, and please bless Mr. Gentile as he teaches us, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rachel, for that prayer. As I said before, I truly am grateful for all of you who come today. Maybe we could start to get to know each other's spirits just a little bit by maybe saying our name and then one thing that we love about America, because that is what this course is about. And this is a sacred opportunity. I think what better place to learn about American history than American heritage? We will learn about that heritage in this course. So why don't we start with, in fact, Rachel, would you start us off? That was such a wonderful prayer. Just your name, and we do have that microphone, and so we'll practice kind of just passing it around, and that'll just be so nice. It'll help our friends, especially those in Wisconsin and other places abroad, to hear us and start to really get to know who we are. Please.
Okay, I'm Rachel Anderson, and one thing I love about America is our freedom of religion, that we can worship how we want and where we want and who we want.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
My name is Emily Anderson, and I love America because, same thing as Rachel said, because of the religious freedom.
Yes. A great reason. That is a well-deserving of a second witness. Thank you.
My name's Caleb Kahn, and probably the same reason, religious freedom, that to be able to have the gospel and be able to not be afraid to practice that. So.
Thank you so much for that testimony.
I'm Ezra Glines, and one thing I love about America is our freedom of speech. We get to say anything.
Thank you. Thank you, Ezra. Great.
Okay, my name is Kathleen Crossley, and I love that Heavenly Father helped the founding fathers establish this on the basis of Christ and Christian principles.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The God of the land, as we will talk about, Jesus Christ. Please.
My name is Linda Anderson, and I love America because you have freedom of speech, and like they said, freedom of religion.
Thank you. Love those. Please, Samuel.
My name is Samuel Anderson, and I love America because it's beautiful.
It is, in many ways, spiritually, physically. Thank you.
I'm Deisha Anderson, Samuel and Rachel's mother, and I love America because as a mother, I have the freedom to teach my children what I like. If I want to homeschool them or send them to a private school or however I'd like to educate them, I have that freedom, which I cherish, so that I can raise them the way that I would like, and I have a freedom to have as many babies as I want and choose how I want to raise my family and things like that.
Those choices are so important. Thank you so much.
I'm Grant Anderson. I love America because of the goodness and patriotic spirit that its people have, and that they have a feeling for their country and have some level of dedication to preserving that freedom.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that witness. Mr. Anderson is also with us.
I love America because I think it witnesses of God's love and Jesus Christ's love, not just for those in America, but for all of the world. Whenever I think of those freedoms, I think they belong not just to some of God's children, they belong to all of His children. And I love how many people, so many people in America, see that vision, that they want to share and build the kingdom of God on the earth. They want to build freedom of choice, freedom of religion for the entire world. And what great people we've had in our past. I hope to learn about some of them in this course.
We will. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm just so grateful for all of your comments. All of them made me think of many scriptures, because for me, I fell in love with America as a little boy. And really, I think it had to have been the spirit of Elijah that pointed my heart back towards the founding generation. Even in the games I would play in the woods of New Hampshire as a boy, my brother and I would try not to fight about who got to be George Washington. You know, that was the discussion. Well, like, you were him yesterday, and there was something sacred about being General Washington, something that was much different than a game of tag, or football or something else. Because I remember as I was young, I enjoy fiction very much, but I have always absolutely had a passion for nonfiction, things that are true, try to get at the truth of life. And I remember as I read the true words in the scriptures about America and felt the power of the promises that God has made to you and to me and to all those whom He would bring to this land, I started to feel something of the awe that I should for a land that is not just a choice land, but a land that is choice above all other lands. And I say that with what I hope is nothing but humility. I hope as we talk about America that we would always have that kind of reverence, never a pride in being better than others, but a gratitude to God. The God who sets the bounds of our habitation, meaning He has a plan in mind for each of us and sends us to different families, sends us to different places across the globe and places in the world's history. And think about it, of all the times in which you could be born, and in all of the places you have been born in these last days in the United States of America. with the fullness of the gospel on the earth. I don't know what you and I did in the premortal life to be chosen for such humbling responsibilities, but we do have responsibilities because of those blessings. And I just know we will talk about those again and again and again in this course. And that's why I love America, because I just feel like I'm a part of something that God has always had a hand in, from the Garden of Eden all the way through the restoration. Zion, the New Jerusalem, I mean, this land is sacred. All right, well, with that said, I'm just so happy to be here with you. Let me just minimize this so I can see. All right. And this class, I want you to know, I could barely sleep last night. I could not. I was lying in bed talking to my wife about how excited I was for this course. And just thinking, I want it to be so wonderful. And then I remembered something that I think is very important. So as I introduce you to the teacher of this course, it made me just a lot more at ease. A little bit about your teacher. Go ahead and tell me something you love about your teacher in this course. What do you love about the true teacher of this course? Hello, come. Good to have you. Welcome. We're just talking about who the real teacher is in this course. Please.
He gives us the power to really know.
The power to really know. He gives us the power to really know, because if, just in case this hasn't made sense yet, who is the real teacher? The Holy Ghost. He's the teacher. Scriptures use different words for others, maybe the preacher or the one who speaks, but the one who teaches our hearts can only be the Holy Ghost. And why is that? Do you see anything in these scriptures about why the true teacher of this course, the one who has the power to affect our hearts, is none other than the Holy Ghost, the third member of the Godhead, a personage of Spirit? Is there a scripture there that you love that talks about what he can do? Please.
The Romans 10:5.
Yes.
Points out truth to us, basically. He says this is what's true and this is what's right.
Wow. And the truth of just the things that you could learn in Sunday school, or if you happen to be talking about Jesus at home. Is that what it says?
No,
what does it say?
It's for all things.
All things, and all means all. American history even, right? And I love that. I have loved feeling the Spirit as I have learned about American history over the course of my life. And every time I do, if my heart's in the right place, I can learn those lessons of the past, and they sink deep and they're wonderful. Anything else you love about the Holy Ghost as the teacher, the true teacher in this course? From these scriptures or anything else that you know about him and what he can do? Please, Sister Anderson. Alicia.
I love how he carries it, the things that we learn to our hearts, the truths that we learn. So it's not just in our mind, and which we might forget,
Yes.
but in our hearts, it makes an indelible impression upon us that can change our lives. So we feel that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And that is so important. You really hit on something that I think is one of the things that, for those of you who've been in the American Heritage community, you know this is one of the greatest treasures here. For those of you who might be new, and I just sort of look into the camera imagining you wherever you might be across the world, and I wish you were, I could just see all of you at the same time. But wherever you might be, one of the things about American Heritage that I think you'll love is this great truth that we don't just learn head knowledge here. We also feel and learn heart knowledge. And we take those wonderful things that we can reason in our heads, and they go down into the fleshy tables of our hearts. And that's when we change. We're changed by truth. We're changed by Christ. He changes us from the inside out, internal, and then it affects our external actions. This is just beautiful. Anyway, I just hope we'll remember this. I think sometimes people say, oh, I'm excited to take this course because I know the teacher. Well, please just remember, while you may know me, I'm really not the teacher. And I will try very hard in every lesson to invite the true teacher to be with us. And I know that you can do that too. And so let's do that together. And then we'll really learn something that will change our lives every time. With that said, just a little bit about me though. I have been so blessed to be involved with the American Heritage community now since 2009. Before that, I was teaching at a private school for boys in Massachusetts. Had some very interesting experiences there that were a very large part of the growth of my testimony, and were sacred privileges to try to stand for truth about marriage and family. And I want you to know that I just could not imagine you and me continuing to have those experiences in these days, as we need to continue to stand for truths about marriage and family in a world where people are confused. If you don't believe it, go and watch the news. Okay. All the time. So with that said, though, I want you to know that I enjoyed all of my studies at BYU and at a school called Brandeis, where I did my graduate work in American history. I had a chance to work with some wonderful scholars, some gentlemen, some disciples of Christ, some of the honorable men and women of the earth who were not of our faith. But in all those places, I want you to know that I was so excited to be pointed to resources that allowed me to learn more about the great history of this country, and I'll share some of those with you. Okay. I don't know if you have any questions in particular about this, but I know you can read it. But one thing, I'll introduce my family in just a moment. But I just hope you know that for my whole life I've loved American history, and whether it was writing the thesis that I did about government in revolutionary Massachusetts in a small town called Marblehead. Anybody been to Marblehead, Massachusetts? That's okay if you haven't. If you ever are back in that area, I would love for you to go. and I can give you lots of things that might help you to be very excited about going there if you'd like. So you can see me at any time. But in fact, I might share some of those today. Please.
Isn't that where the road Washington across the Delaware?
That's exactly where they were from. Yes, excellent. Student of American history. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, and we'll talk about General John Glover and his men and that. In fact, they actually helped Washington escape from New York as well. Anyway, just these men from Marblehead, they could use oars as well as guns, as a few of the founding fathers once remarked about them. And anyway, so it's kind of a neat group to study. And when I was there, one of the things that I love that I'll share a little bit with you today is just this love of going to the source for American history, to go to the primary sources, to actually, I've held in my very own hands, and perhaps you have as well, sources from General Washington, written in his own hand, in white gloves. I had them, this yellow paper, and there I was, and whether it was the Massachusetts Historical Society or the Massachusetts State Archives or some other repositories, Marblehead, I spent a lot of time there. A lot of churches have great records from those eras, and anyway, it was so fascinating. So I'll share some of those things today. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you, grateful for those experiences, and excited. So for that, let's see, ready to connect. Well. I'll just start telling you. I see a nice picture here, but I'm sure it might be able to come back. What about, let's see. This one? Okay. Well, I have a beautiful wife named Christina. And we have been married for 9 years. We just celebrated our 9th wedding anniversary just a few days ago on August 18th. And I was trying to think of a way to introduce my family to you. And so I tried to pick one gift. They all have many gifts, but one gift for each of them. And what I love about Christina, among other things, is that she is truly without guile. She is someone who's always just so sincere. She does the right things for the right reasons. She doesn't have any hidden agendas. She doesn't put on a false face, in front of certain people, and then at home she'll really, say how she feels. She is the same person wherever she is, and I love that about her. I feel that that's a very, very Christ-like quality that she has. I also have 4 children, and then one coming in the next couple weeks, due September 11th. Our oldest is Mia. Mia is 7. She's looking forward to being baptized. Mia has many gifts, but one thing I really love about Mia is her wisdom. She makes connections in the scriptures that just make me feel like I'm sitting at the feet of someone who's been around a lot longer than I have. We don't know how old each of our spirits is, but maybe hers is much older than mine, because sometimes I feel like a little dwarf spiritually compared to her. And I love her for that. We also have Joshi, and Joshi loves many things, but the characteristic I picked for him was diligence. He's the one where if you say, okay, Josh, we're going to work as a family today, we are going to weed the garden, and really do a good job. And we talk about marrying the plants together, to make sure that there aren't weeds in between them either. Anyway, he will stay out there hours. And his sisters have all gone inside, and they've done a good job, and he's still there in the dirt with his little fingers. He's sweating, and he's got, these beads just coming down his face, and I gave him a little towel and a drink. He's okay, Dad, I'm almost done. And 2 hours later, he's still there. And I think, oh, Josh, you know how to work. You are diligent. What a great quality to have. Anyway, he is very diligent, and I love that about him. Acadia, her middle name is Joy. And I feel that that's something that we felt to name her, and I feel that we've seen why as she's grown older. She is one who is always laughing. She loves telling stories. She loves making jokes. She has these little shirts that she carries around instead of baby dolls. All the other kids like dolls, but she likes these shirts. And she has this little fleece of them. They're all the same. And she always asks us to buy her a new one, exactly the same shirt, the same model, the same size. They're green shirts. And so we buy these little shirts for her, and she has a little family of shirts, and she puts them to bed, and she sings to them, and she feeds them, and she reads the scriptures to them. There's all these. But one day, though, I said, oh, Acadia, please tell me. So now, is this one a boy or a girl? And she looked at me and said, Dad, shirt. Oh, excuse me. And she had to make these funny jokes all the time, and really, she's very special in that way. And I do love how funny she is. Thank you so much for that. Wonderful. And well, I appreciate all of your help, Mr. Anderson. Let me just show you that this is my dear wife. Here she is. And in fact, let me maybe turn one of the lights off, and you'll be able to see just the color just a little bit better there. Is that all right for you? Okay, great. Anyway, there she is. And her middle name is also Joy. She's a joy. My like men are that they might have joy. And I found the right wife when I met her and learned her middle name. This is our sweet Mia, who's 7, as I spoke about, who is just full of wisdom. And here is little Joshi, who, and here he is. He's near his element. The garden is very close to this spot. He loves to be there each day. And then there is our little Acadia Joy. She is 4, and just like I said, full of so much love. And this is our Hope. Hope is 2. Hope has taught us many things. I love this picture because of her eyes. I feel that those eyes are a window into who she is as a daughter of God. She has a grace about her that she came with that humbles me, and she has felt much of the Lord's grace, God's help in her life as she has fought cancer, and through the miracles of the Lord is now cancer-free. We just got another test back just today even, and her AFP levels, which is sort of a cancer chemical count, 2.7, and anything below 15 is considered normal. You may have a 2.7 cancer count as well, which is okay. Anyway, and so she's great. She's cancer-free still, so we're so grateful to the Lord for that. And that's something that has been kind of in the spring and the summer. Anyway, I'll certainly keep you updated as I hear more. But that is our little Hope, who's so full of grace. And then this is one of the latest pictures of Daniel, due September 11th. And it's interesting, we haven't met him yet on the outside, but my wife has certainly felt his physical strength, as he is perhaps a soccer player in the future. He kicks and he kicks and he kicks all hours of the day and night, and it's beautiful. In fact, he was kicking in Sacrament meeting, and Joshi put his head on my wife's belly for a moment, and he gave him a kick there, and Josh said, "What was that?" And he was all troubled, and I said, "Oh, that's the baby, Josh. That's Daddy." And he said, I didn't know he could have such a big leg. so there he is. So I guess he got big legs. I haven't seen them yet, but I've tried to build them. Anyway, but I do think that we're naming him Daniel for a very, very special reason. If you think about some of the stories of Daniel, the courage that he showed, even in the face of a government that was, let's say, fading in faith, not worshiping the God that they should have. We hope he'll remember those lessons and feel that he has that kind of spirit. So we're grateful for that strength and look forward to meeting him more. Well, I did say I'd tell some stories. So if you go back with me, this is in Boston. Anybody been to Boston? Wonderful. Did you walk past the Massachusetts Historical Society just per chance? You've been. Did you go in?
No, if we did, I was pretty low.
That's right. Well, here are the front doors. The front doors aren't anything much, but if you go inside, and if you can prove that you have some kind of credentials, they try to keep these documents very safe, but if you can go in, as I did when I was in graduate school, they have room after room after room of documents from the Founding Fathers. And I remember sitting at a table, and they would give me, and I can't remember because I went to so many different repositories, and some wanted latex gloves, some wanted no gloves at all, and others wanted white cotton gloves. So I honestly can't remember which one they used for my hands. But whenever I was sitting there at the table, and they gave you these little kind of pillows for the documents to rest them on, because they didn't want you to handle them too much. And so I remember going in there and I'm saying, well, I'm looking at 1775 right now, and I'm really trying to see the role of the Second Continental Congress. Please, help me out with this or that or the other. And anyway, and they would bring in these documents from Washington, and Jefferson, and John Adams, and Sam Adams. And I just want you to know it was just such a pleasure. If I could have, if I needed to die in that moment, let's just say I would have died very, very happily, would have awaited the spiritual, communion that we would have had on the other side of the veil with these great men and women from history. And so you can imagine this place here. Well, let me take you back a little further. This is a picture from 1763. This is just before the beginning of the Grenville program, where we'd see the different taxation that would become so burdensome to the colonists. Anyway, and so with that said, here we have Ashley Bowen, who wrote a very famous journal. He did a lot of things, kind of a jack of all trades, but worked on ships for many, many years. And he was also an artist and somewhat of a poet and did a lot of things. And anyway, he drew this of Marblehead Harbor. And if you can go, you can sort of see some of the, the old meeting house, the new meeting house, as they called it, and some of the others. But they had there an Anglican church. They had some congregational churches, which were what the Puritan churches became known as. These congregational churches. Anyway, just a beautiful old town. And in fact, if you go to Marblehead, they have more buildings from the 17 and 1800s than anywhere else that are preserved and in sort of good working order. People live in them still, so just a neat place to go and visit. Anyway, but Ashley Bowen did some things in a journal that were part of something that I wrote about. And I wanted to give you just a little glimpse here of American history as we're going to hopefully enjoy it this year. So with that said, let me tell you a story. This is something that I wrote just sort of about an experience there that I had. And this will take us back to Marblehead, as you've seen. This is Massachusetts in the year 1775. So notice this is the year of, can you think of one or two very famous battles from this year? That's okay. You're just a year earlier, and that's okay. But where did we start?
Lexington and Concord.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachel. Excellent. So Lexington and Concord, and then you could talk about Bunker Hill or Breeds Hill and that sort of thing. Anyway, but by the time we were sort of a year out from declaring independence officially, and the neat thing is, and I would recommend this to you. Certainly, we're familiar with what we call the Declaration of Independence, but we have hundreds of declarations of independence from states, from counties, from towns, from individual congregations, and you can read those, and they're fascinating. They all have this same spirit of the Declaration that we revere as the vision statement for the founding of our nation. But I do recommend you take a look at those too. Anyway, with that said, here we are in 1775, and we're in the midst of this transition. And it was this uneasy balance between people who really had started a long time ago to create a new identity as Americans, but they were still on paper subjects of the British Empire. and that was terribly troublesome to them. So let's see here. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, life found me with my nose stuck in a book full of yellowed pages. Bless you. And ink splotches. I was at the Massachusetts Historical Society in Boston, and I held in my, well, I guess I had the white gloves, the white gloved hands, a treasure, an 18th century, which means 1700s, record from a small town in Massachusetts called Marblehead. The record whispered stories of the American Revolution into my ears. And remember, when we talk about the American Revolution, as John Adams said, the revolution occurred long before the shooting war started. The real American Revolution wasn't the shooting war. It was the change in the minds and hearts of the people that occurred, especially between 1764 and 1774. And then 5, we really start to see these changes boiling over into we want to break from Britain. Anyway, so that's the real American Revolution. Anyway, the record whispered stories of the American Revolution into my ears and filled my eyes with scenes of courage, sacrifice, and faith. One of these stories went something like this, and this is from my original research at the Massachusetts Historical Society. I found these documents there as well as in the Marblehead town records, which were these books that were about this big, this tall, we're here this tall, and this wide, and they would set them down one at a time, and you would open them up very carefully, and then I would have my little laptop and I would transcribe, and then I'd do my research from that. Anyway, hoofbeats on frozen dirt roads pierced the silence of a cold December night. Amidst the darkness, Elbridge Gerry and Azar Orne sped on horseback toward Marblehead. News that their hometown lay engulfed in flames by a British naval attack filled the Whig leaders' hearts with increasing dread as they briskly covered the 25 miles that separated Watertown from their home next to the Atlantic. After hours of hard riding, they reached their destination just before midnight and were shocked by what they did not see. As Gerry reported, instead of the roaring of cannon, fire, and smoke, we found all quiet. Earlier in the day, their fellow Marbleheaders' courage had scared 3 British frigates, types of a ship, into sailing out of the harbor without a fight. The ships had come with their guns run out on the morning of December 13th, 1775, and formed a line against a battery, like a fort, that had cannon. Overlooking the mouth of the harbor, in response, Marblehead's militia had quickly mustered in the newly rebuilt fort, manned 20 cannon, and ordered all women and children out of the town. As the men waited with a grim resolve to defend their liberty by countering force with force, the militia's drummers beat a rolling cadence. Upon the enemy hearing the drums, and from the top gallant mastheads, seeing the lines in order, Gerry proudly recounted to Samuel Adams. This was one of the letters I remember reading. He was so excited about this. The British thought it prudent not to engage and left the harbor. If the townsmen had not wanted to conserve their limited supply of powder and shot, they would gladly have honored the king's ships with a royal salute. There's a little bit of sarcasm there from Gerry. By standing firm for what they believed, the Marblehead militia had won the day. After reading that story, remember I had the document in my hands. I'd never known about that story before. My hands trembled, my heart pounded, my spirit soared. In my mind's eye, I stood with the brave patriots of Marblehead. Behind a wall of stone, below a tall oak tree, above the harbor, I stood, with musket in hand, ready to die, if necessary, for faith, family, and freedom. As I watched the British ship sail away in defeat, I felt the adrenaline rush of victory and the sweet peace of divine protection. That story, on those yellowed, ink-splotched pages, had transported me to the past and inspired me to be a better keeper of liberty's flame in the future. Such is the blessing of history. That's why we're here, to learn those stories. Tell me, what stands out most to you about this little piece of our heritage? Tell me about this little known story and what stands out to you about it. What would you reason are some principles that these militiamen of Marblehead believed and acted on that you might like to do the same? Please.
It reminds me of Captain Moroni, Faith, Family, and Freedom.
Yes.
And I would like to do the same too.
I love that comment. Thank you so much. It reminds you of Captain Moroni, Faith and Family and Freedom, and you would like to do the same thing too. Thank you so much. Please, here. Oh, and let's try to use those microphones just so our friends in Wisconsin or Virginia or wherever they might be can hear us. And I think we have 3 of them, and so there should be pretty well spread out. Thank you so much.
I love how they were all so courageous, and were willing to die for what Kathleen said, faith, family, and freedom.
Yes.
Because it would have been really hard to just stand there and know that you could die.
Thank you for that. It would have been hard, but I love that they had the courage to do it anyway. Please, here and then. Yeah.
Did they actually engage in fighting, or the British were just scared?
They were scared off. They saw the response from the town, and they said, today's not the day. Today is not the day. So thank you for that. Please.
For me, it just kind of reminds me a little bit about Helaman's letters to Moroni. He's talking about the stripling warriors, and there weren't many of them, but they knew they had God with them and were able to prevail against something bigger.
Thank you for that. Right? The stripling warriors, there weren't many of them, but they knew they had God with them. And because God was with them, they knew they would prevail. Thank you. Oh, wonderful. Anything else that just stands out to you about this experience? Please.
I loved how because they were standing firm for what they believed, they won and they scared the British off.
What does that teach you? If God inspired you to stand for something?
To stand for it, because if you do, then you'll most likely win.
You will. In this life or the next. Certainly we know that those who stand with God, even if they stand on the wrong side of history, which is a quote you hear thrown out all the time now, will stand on the right side of God. And standing on the right side of the Supreme Being is so much more important than someone with a limited view thinking that you're right. I love that. You will be right when you do what's right. Well, as I said, we could talk about so many things, but the neat thing is what you'll see is in this town, there was, and this is just one town of many, that had the same response, that had people just like you and me. And over the course of months, especially as 1774 and the Intolerable Acts turned into 1775, there was a response. And this response brought a change in government. And this was where we see that government is all about something that goes back to a foundational principle that God's given us. God has given us the power to act and not be acted upon. And because of that, when people stand and act and assert their freedoms from God, this divine gift of liberties that come with each of us as inalienable rights, simply because we're children of God, such as life and liberty and property. As we stand for those and others stand with us, we'll see that those who are in the wrong end up fading away. It's exactly what happened, because we see here that even though on paper they were subjects of the British king, in their hearts they were Americans. And because of that, they started to create extra legal, meaning not within the bounds of anything that Britain had given them legality to do, extra legal governing bodies, miniature congresses, as well as larger ones. And we'll see that we have county committees, we have town committees, right? We have colonial committees and groups that are starting to make laws, and people are listening to them, even though those bodies aren't sanctioned by the king. And we see this transition in 1775. And the neat thing is, in Marblehead, what you see is a group of people who got together at a town meeting, and their town meetings were based on consensus. It was not a majoritarian vote that won the day. It wasn't, let's get together and the majority rules, and if it's 60-40, well, then I guess the 60 rule, another 40 need to kind of get in line. It was, we will talk about this, and the line was from Marblehead, we wish to face the Lord as one man. That's what they worked for. Unanimity, harmony. They were disciples of Jesus Christ, and they knew that one of the fruits of the Spirit, one of the fruits of being disciples, is finding a unity in righteousness. And that's what, even in these town meetings, I read thousands and thousands of pages of town meeting minutes. Every word said, well, not the word typing, okay, that's what we do, but they were writing them down. And they were constantly, if one person struggled, they would hold out the conversation and say, please tell us, why is it that you feel this way? Help us to understand you. And that person would speak, and they would all talk together, and they would continue to talk, and it would take days sometimes. Days and days and days. It wasn't a quick, well, you know the issues, make your vote and go away, we'll count them, and then we'll let you know who wins. It was, we want everyone to feel on board with this. In 1775, one of the issues was one regarding some people who did not want to let go of the king. They said, we just have these business interests, because remember, Marblehead is right on the coast. Many, many fishermen, they'd sell fish as well as other things, other goods that they transport, but a lot of fishing in that area, up and down the coast, but also to Great Britain. They would go all the way across, and many of these men were some of the richest in the colonies. And so they said, if we go against the king, we're going to hurt our own livelihood. Now, tell me there. Are you willing to give up traditional marriage if someone wants to give you $1 million? What about if you have a company and somebody said, oh, well, boycott your company. We'll put you out of business unless you change your health insurance policies. That would then involve something that you disagree with, and you'd be forced to have that as part of what you're paying for. What's the principle here that this town understood when it came to these men who said, we're rich. We don't want to give up our riches for freedom. We'd rather stay under the king. It's a lot more convenient. There's a lot more security. What principle is being tested in this moment? What would you reason? It's the same principle as Daniel in the lion's den before he was in the den and what he chose to do, even though it would send him to the den. What's the principle here? Please.
Often choosing the right is not convenient.
Choosing the right is not convenient. Often. I love that. Would you like to add to that great comment? And let's, if we could, I'm just so sorry. We will get very used to this. If we could use the microphone just for our friends who we can't see. Thank you.
Well, obedience to God is the most important, and also faith. They needed to have faith that they could get along without all their money and with God's help, instead of relying on the king's money that he would give them for their earthly materials.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Friends, could we relate this for a moment? Have you ever faced a situation like that where you had to choose between standing for what was right and some kind of gain in the eyes of the world? Whether it was popularity, maybe it was money, prestige, power. Have you ever had a situation like that? When has that been for you? Please remind me of your name.
Leah.
Thank you so much, Leah. Do we have the microphone? I'm so sorry. I know that but it's a good arm workout. It'll make you strong.
Sometimes I think when you've earned a lot of money and
Is it pushed all the way up?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's. Oh, there you go. Okay, sorry.
when you earn a lot of money and you have to pay tithing,
Yes.
sometimes that can be hard to do because you think I've worked so hard for this. I don't want to just give this much away, especially when it's a bigger amount than it's more. Anyway, I just think that's sometimes hard.
Yes, I love that example. Thank you so much. I remember the first time that I earned, $100. I was so excited because I was saving for something that was $100, and I was ready. I said, oh, I have my $100 now, and then I thought, wait, tithing means that I only really have $90, and somehow I hadn't done the math. It hadn't dawned on me, and I said, oh, okay. And there was that moment, that little choice, and I knew the right thing, and I did the right thing, but there was that choice. Thank you for that great example. Anybody else ever faced a situation like that? Like Daniel, if you pray, you will be thrown to the lions. But you prayed anyway, figuratively speaking. You made the right choice anyway. Do what is right, let the consequence follow. Have you ever lived that? When was it for you? Please.
Well, right now I'm actually going through this. So
Yes.
My husband and I started a business about 7 years ago, and it's taken a lot of my time.
Yes.
I used to be a homeschool mom, so
Yes.
when we started the business, our kids came to American Heritage, which has been a fantastic place.
Yes.
But I felt inspired over the past couple of years to homeschool my kids again.
Yes.
And to get back home because I put so much time in at the office, and
Yes.
but I'm the main person in our company. I'm the head designer. Everything revolves on me, and we have hundreds of people that rely upon what I do.
Right.
And I've just felt over and over that I need to break away and let other people figure out how to be me in a sense. I guess.
Sure, the things you've been doing, yeah.
Yeah, and I relearned a principle that I knew, but I had forgotten how to apply it, I guess, again to my life, and by Elder Bednar. And it was the principle of faith. Faith is an action, and we can't just decide in our head that we want to do something. We have to actually do it, and then it's when we do it that the Lord fills in the gaps for us.
Yes.
And so I had been praying and saying, Heavenly Father, I want to do this. Why aren't you opening up the way? Why aren't you, I've been trying and I've been putting my faith out there and everything. And then I realized that I'd just been saying that I wanted to do this, but I hadn't actually made the choice and said I was going to do it. And it took a huge amount of courage because it doesn't make sense at all.
Yes.
On paper, and everyone thinks it's crazy. And it is crazy. Really, it is crazy, but I just knew that until I took that step and made that choice and started moving in that direction, that it wouldn't work out. And now things are falling into place, and I've been spending a lot of time in the temple because it's really easy for me because I'm like an all or nothing person,
Sure.
So anyway, it's been working out great, and things are starting to fall into place, and I've just watched the Lord work miracles because of me putting forth faith. And even though it's been really hard and it's not going to be exactly what I want all the time, but it's okay. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you for being such a great example, not only to your children, but to all of us of doing the right thing even when it's hard. If you had a friend who came to you as we continue this relating step and said, I just don't know if I can do the right thing because I want the money, or I want the popularity, or I want the prestige, I want the power. I could be the president of the class if I lower my standards just a little bit. And maybe it's not a big deal. And you start to justify it, If they came to you, what advice would you give them about why they should do the right thing, even if it meant losing out on some of those things they wanted very much? What advice would you give as to why do the right thing anyway? Please. Thank you so much.
You get, Heavenly Father blesses those who do what they're supposed to, even if they don't want to do that. And I know that when I was in 5th grade, my mom had a heart surgery, and so I had to be pulled out of school.
Yes.
And I really didn't want to leave, and it was really hard. But when I came home, I helped my mom a lot, and eventually I'm really into music, and I started winning tons of competitions, and it was just sort of a way of saying that of Heavenly Father letting me know that He cared about me.
I love that. There were blessings. There were blessings that perhaps wouldn't even have come if you hadn't made that sacrifice. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else? Somebody said, oh, why? Why should I do the right thing? I just don't know if I want to. Anything else you would say? Please.
Basically just the people that you should want to impress are not going to be the ones who you are going to impress if you compromise your standards. And above all that, God is the one we want to impress the most. So.
Thank you. Right. Which way do you face? That question could apply here. Which way do you face? Please.
Well, I think, there's a consequence, good or bad,
Yes.
to every choice that we make.
Yes.
And sometimes we make certain choices because we just think that the outcome is going to be what we want. And I found that most of the time, the Lord always gives us a little twinge or a little thought of what that consequence might feel like. But He's so gracious, He lets us choose and decide what we, ultimately what we want, and there's always that consequence. And the consequence is good or bad,
Yes.
and even sometimes the bad consequences can teach us good things
Yes.
because it helps us to realize that next time when I see a little glimpse of what that consequence might be, I remember because I chose against it last time and it was really painful. So this time I'm actually going to follow
Yes.
because I don't want that same consequence again.
Learn from the past, your own past. And we'll do that in this class. Oh, I love that. I love that. Wouldn't it have been easy for Daniel to have faith if he'd been sent to fight a beanbag? Just there he is, facing it down, lying inanimate on the ground. Yeah, right? I mean, that wouldn't have taken much faith. The faith came in staring across the battlefield at this Goliath of a Goliath, right? Okay, this giant who really should have killed him. He didn't have any business winning, Daniel didn't, right? Other than that the Lord gave him the power. I hope we remember that. That the way will be lighted ahead for just a few steps into the darkness, but God will expect us to walk, and we will not be able to see all things. We are here to walk by faith. So can I just invite you, as we just sort of conclude this brief section of relating here, to think about this principle of doing what's right, regardless of what the world might do to you as a result, knowing that God and His approval are all that matter in the end. The members of these different committees in Marblehead, and I'm so sorry, I don't know why we can't see them here, but I will try to, let's see. Okay. Anyway, maybe it will come back to us. I'll continue the story. But the interesting thing is, the members of these committees in Marblehead did have a difficult decision to make when it came to their friends. I mean, these people had grown up together, their children played together, et cetera. They went to church together. But here we have this instance where they did make a choice. They said, you know what, we know what's right. We're going to move forward with the revolution. These men can come or not. But they went ahead and they ended up saying, we're going to create these committees of safety, these committees of correspondence. We'll watch the doings of these people who refuse to come and fight for freedom, and we'll make sure that they're not going to sabotage these efforts for what's right. will then send these members of the Committee of Correspondence to other towns to report and let them know here's what's happening here and what's happening in your town. They pass information back and forth. These are the pieces of the American Revolution that constituted what many have called the real American Revolution. Because remember, all of this was extra legal. This was not sanctioned. This wasn't started by Britain. In fact, when Britain found out about it, they tried to stop these things, but these good men and women found a way to continue to do what they knew was right. Sort of long story short, all of this, by the way, this could be 132 pages of information as part of the thesis that I wrote. Anyway, this is just a little tiny snippet of a couple stories that I wanted to share, but I did want to read something to you. And I do apologize that you can't see it here right now, but I do have it here. And that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that Mr. Anderson knows exactly how to fix this. But one day I hope to grow up to become like him. Until then, we need him. So please, Mr. Anderson.
Could I make one other?
Please, we would love to hear it. Yes.
It seems to me like the principle you've been teaching us to do what's right, no matter what.
Exactly.
Is very well exemplified by those marble headers that were in that fort.
Yes.
I don't know the historical background of a British frigate, but I'm pretty sure that the firepower and the cannons on those frigates, they had to have at least 100 cannon against 20.
All of the troops with all of the guns, and I mean, yes.
The odds were similar to David and Goliath.
Yes, exactly.
But the significance of their united front,
yes,
which chased the British off,
yes,
is that was forged in their town meetings as they taught each other principles of truth.
Yes.
As they formed those committees and whatever it was they were doing.
Yes.
And we also see the hand of God in the sense that had that battle happened, many of those men would have given their lives and would not have been there to row Washington across the Delaware and to deliver him at New York.
Yes.
At least that's the way I imagine it. I don't know if that would correspond with all your studies, but
yes.
But the way they showed their united front, the British probably thought, oh, we'll just come sailing in here and they'll all run away.
Yes.
But the British had to have seen that they sent their women and children away. That was an interesting object lesson to those Brits that
yes,
those guys weren't leaving the fort.
Right.
They were going to stand there and they were going to die doing it. And a lot of the British were going to lose their lives at the same time, even though they may have wiped them out. And so a lot of times in our battles between truth and error in our life,
yes,
if we have a united front with those that also are standing for truth,
yes,
our families and those that we trust, it can put the fear in to the bad guys.
Yes.
It can really let them know, we're going to do whatever it takes, whatever sacrifice we have to make, we are going to stand for truth. And it just, I see the hand of the Lord a lot in that situation as you explained it to us.
Thank you for that. I love your reasoning. I love your relating. I love your testimony. Thank you so much for sharing these things. Please, yes. Oh, no, that's why we're here. And just so you know, one of the reasons why we're doing this, rather than because I'll do some of the nuts and bolts and kind of explain the course and try to be helpful in that way too, but I do want us to feel what the course will be like. This is what the course will be like. So I hope that this is something that to you is inspiring, because it is inspiring to me. So
I don't want to go off on another direction.
No, please,
but
please.
I just wanted to bring this one point up,
yes,
and it's something that always interests me so much in this group of people and
yes,
this era of time. And I think it's so interesting how these people, like you were talking about before, how they came together and the unity. I mean, they were ultimate or close to living the law of consecration, in that they cared so much about the whole body being one.
Yes.
And I look at our time, and we're way too busy with our phones, with our computers, with our games, with our materialism, to even care about our neighbors, to go to town meetings, to get involved and invested. And it just the contrast between community now and community then is scary.
Yes.
And I wonder what it will take to get us back to that point. And that's why I love studying this topic, and you just hope and wish that somehow people could get back to that point of caring. And I wonder what will happen to our country to get us back to that point, because it's so important. We cannot be God's people the way he needs us to be when we're so divided and separated as a country and as neighbors. And
yes.
Anyway, that's all I'll say.
No, that is a wonderful, wonderful point, and thank you so much for bringing up that great principle, this idea of consecration, and the way we view our neighbors. So often we are just this fragmented group, and we are ships passing in the night. I'll never forget just a little story about that, because I think this is important. I'll never forget the time that I was in a church. And as I was in that church, I was walking through the hallway. Hello. As I was walking through the hallway, I just overheard this very loud conversation. So it wasn't like I was eavesdropping. I just was walking by on my way to Sunday school or something. Anyway, there were these two mothers speaking to each other. They said, "Oh, did you hear about the so-and-so family?" "Oh, yes, I heard. Yeah, the dad lost his job, and I heard that they don't really have anything, and they don't really have any food." And the other mother said, "Well, they're fine. The government will take care of it." And then in that moment, they both said, right, and they just walked away. And I just sort of intersected the conversation without knowing about it. But in that moment, I stopped. And I remember watching them walking in separate ways, having felt that the situation was solved, that they didn't have any more to do in it, that they brought it up as a piece of gossip, I guess. I don't know what their motivation was, but they brought it up as a piece of news. And then here they were, without any more plan of action or desire to help, at least that was expressed in that conversation. And where it was left was this place of, where are we as neighbors? Have we forgotten the two great commandments? There are only two of them. Have we forgotten them? I can't remember three things, but the two I think I usually get right, and it just, that was one of the saddest moments for me, really, when I heard that. And like I said, I don't know what they did when they went home. Maybe they felt bad. Maybe they brought a meal over or whatever.
But I wonder why government's taking over.
Yes.
Because we've given them the power to take over. You just take care of everything. We don't need to do anything for each other.
Thank you so much for that. And so these principles. In fact, let's just step back from what Elder Scott, Richard G. Scott, the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, said that principles are truths, concentrated truths, packaged for application to a wide variety of circumstances. Notice, these truths are true in Marblehead in 1775. They're true today. Truth is truth. Truth is reality. Things as they really are. Past, present, future. So I love talking about these things that apply across the generations, across culture as well. Okay, so with that said, just to sort of finish up here, and one more thing too, I think you'll find this, and I really love we have two Mr. Anderson, they're all wonderful, these Andersons, we love them. So Mr. Anderson, thank you. Both thank you to Mr. Anderson, who helped with our computer, as well as to Grant Anderson, who's here with us and made that wonderful comment. I do want to say too, and I think we can't overstate the importance of this. You brought up that they were talking about Christian principles in their town meetings. I want to say that was exactly true. As I, read these town meeting minutes, it read many a time like a Sunday school class versus just some kind of civic meeting, where people were scared to bring up the truths that they lived by and the God that they loved. And that was beautiful. But the other thing, too, is I just love how these Christians, you think about the roles of fathers as protectors. And you think about this idea of sending away your women and your children. And you imagine if your fathers and your brothers and your grandfathers and your uncles sent you off to safety while they stood and were willing to die as a protector by divine design for you. That to me is also incredibly moving about their Christian discipleship as those who understood marriage and family and the way it should be, right? Husbands, right? Love your wives, right? even as Christ, and you think about this idea of as he, right, gave himself for the church, and you're like, whoa, wow, that kind of sacrifice is what we should be about. Anyway, so I hope that you have a home in which you see a father as a protector in that way. But I do want to testify that even if you don't, because I don't know all the situations of the many who could be with us today, and there could be hundreds listening in, and I know a few of these wonderful families in front of me, but can I just say, wherever you are and whatever type of family you have, I do want to testify, you can choose to become that kind of protector as a husband. And you can, if you have that grand privilege of becoming a wife and a mother, you can choose to become a nurturer because of that mother heart that God has given you. And so I love, there's so many principles in these stories, and I love them. Well, this is just one last one that I think is important. I want to make sure we understand this. And this is just a little piece of something that I wrote as part of the thesis work. Anyway, before concluding the town meeting, where they elected some of these townsfolk to some of these different committees to attend these extra legal governments that were quickly becoming the only ones that were backed by consent, meaning the only ones that were actually legitimate, even though they weren't on paper. You have a slow connection. Let's see. What would you recommend, Mr. Anderson? Should I? Oh, there we go. Whatever you think is best is great for me. Great, thank you so much for that. Anyway, before concluding, one of the very many town meetings that I had a chance to study, where they elected these good men to a local Congress. Marbleheaders further distanced themselves from British authority by voting to create a committee of observation and prevention to cooperate with other towns in this province for preventing any of its inhabitants from supplying the troops in the province. That's the colony of Massachusetts, that province, with labor, lumber, joist spars, pickets, straw, bricks, or any other materials which may by them be wanted. Supporting Britain in any way was quickly becoming an act of great interest to political theorists. Such support was legal in the eyes of a government, Great Britain's, that had lost the people's consent, and illegal in the eyes of a government, Massachusetts, and all these local governments by the people, that had won the people's consent. The political reality had become such that in a clash of paper sovereignty, who really ruled, which belonged to Britain, and popular sovereignty, so think about these two ideas, paper sovereignty and popular sovereignty. Was it the British who, right, were the legitimate government source, or was it the people, right, which the colonists expressed by creating and abiding by governing bodies like the Provincial Congress? The people had relocated legitimacy in a political body that responded to their consent. This is huge. The implications here are massive. Government of the people had been transformed by the people when it had ceased working for the people. In this expression of popular sovereignty, a true revolution had taken place. And so with that, so let me just show you something that will come up again and again and again, this idea of government. And this is something that we have expressed by these inspired writers like John Locke, who you may have studied, and many, many others, but here they are writing about government and the roles of government. And anyway, we have these different concepts that will sort of come up again and again in the class, and this really might be very helpful for you for understanding the American Revolution, because truly this is how the political theorists of their day, the Thomas Jeffersons and the John Adams, etc., and all the other pamphleteers that may be lesser known, like Daniel Delaney, etc., understood government as this important four-step cycle, okay, that involved a state of nature, as they called it, a social contract in government's role, the consent of the governed, and then popular sovereignty and the right to alter or abolish. All right, and when this happened, you'd be back in a state of nature, and you'd have to reform the social contract based on government's only role. You'd keep that alive via consent of the governed, and if it went south, well, remember, God has given us agency, which is the power to act and not be acted upon, right? We're agents to act rather than objects to be acted upon. And so with that said, let's take a look here. This is just some important sort of political theory behind all of this, this revolution that we've been talking about. Okay, so in terms of state of nature, Right? These things hopefully are very familiar to you, even if that title, state of nature, maybe isn't as familiar to you. Hopefully these truths are. Okay, what does that mean? In our natural state, what does God give us? What do we have from him? Okay, without any government at all, what do we have? God grants his children rights to life, liberty, and property. He also gives them knowledge of good and evil. He allows opposition, and he gives us the power of agency to act and not to be acted upon. He holds us accountable for what they do with his gifts. We have all of that from him without government. Okay? Now, the people do create government when, because think of it, if we just look at life, liberty, and property. We could spend all of our days trying to stop people from killing us, enslaving us, and stealing from us. Life, liberty, property, you see sort of the opposites. We could do that, but we don't, okay, for some practical reasons. We like to homeschool our kids. We like to be at American Heritage, right? We like to maybe play soccer. But maybe you don't want to spend all day, every day with weapons guarding your own home from those who might encroach and try to trample upon, right, what God's given you. So, right, the people create a contract in which they loan some of their power to establish government. And government exists to protect their God-given rights. So it's this two-way street of, okay, we will say that we'll give a little to keep you alive. We'll create you and we'll give you life as long as you do what we created you to do, which is to do the things that we don't want to spend all day doing so that we can go about our own lives, enjoying our families and other pursuits, right? And so we create this government, and its role is to protect these God-given rights that we have in the state of nature without government. Okay, so far, what we're going to see is we've created a government. We've told it, by the way, we've created you. Here's what you are to do. If you don't do it, watch out, because we gave you life, we can take it away. Speaking of the government, okay? And so this is where we have this phase of consent of the governed. Do we consent to what the government's doing? First of all, we need to know what the government's doing to consent or not, okay? But the people keep their creation, government, alive, legitimate, beneficial, and in check by exercising consent through obedience to laws, service, making their voices heard in support or opposition, voting, and amending their contract when needed. If it stops, you need to tweak it to have it come back to actually protecting those God-given rights, what you created it to do, right? Okay, so here's where we have this phase. We've been talking a little bit about this, but mostly about this, right, in terms of Marblehead in 1775. When their creation, government, violates the contract, the people exercise their ultimate authority and power, because that's where sovereignty really lies. And why? Because the ultimate sovereign of sovereigns gave them the power to act. Okay? The power to alter or abolish it, even if that means revolution. And guess what? If revolution happens, it's okay. And why? Because you still have all of this in the state of nature from God. You still have all of the rights because they come from him. Government doesn't grant rights. If they did, they could also have the corollary be true, which would be to take them away. Right? Rights come from God. And so, with that said, right, in the American Revolution, they entered this new state of nature, which means that they got to then decide upon a new government. And that's all of the very, very interesting things we see with the Constitution making that happened after this vision statement. The Declaration of Independence was proclaimed, right? We have this great period between 1776 and, go all the way to 87 with the convention, 88 with New Hampshire, 91 with finding the Bill of Rights, and just go all the way through. You start to see, right, that constitution making then is the people creating a new contract and saying, remember, here's what we want you, our creation, to do. And if you don't do it, remember, we can keep tweaking you. And if we keep tweaking you and you won't be tweaked, well, remember this step. And then it takes us back to here, and we're great because of what God's given us. And anyway, this is the way the revolutionary generation thought. This is boiled down 1,000 pages of political treatises, right, into a little wheel. And then here's my best shot at trying to explain it to you, okay? To try to boil it down. Anyway, with that said, please, would you just tell me what is something that you really want to incorporate into your own life now that you've learned a little bit about the founding generation and how they understood government? What would you reason would be principles that you hope to also hold up, teach others about, practice in your own life, remember, whatever it might be? Please.
Just having morals, because this doesn't work
Exactly.
without
Yes.
morals.
Love that. Love it. And this idea of where does, God fit? If you don't have God when you create the government, think of how much this will be skewed from the start, because you'll forget about what you actually have in the state of nature and who gave it to you and how you can even continue to have it. And so it's like, I love that. Very significant. Many implications from that comment. Anybody else? What's something you hope to remember? Samuel. There we go. Thank you so much for passing that, Rachel.
That every action that we make affects the freedom of both ourselves and the people around us, and the government is there to protect that freedom. And so every action the government takes through our power is our responsibility, and that's why it's essential to have morals, is because it affects the freedom of God's children.
Oh, thank you so much for that. We are the masters. We need to be responsible. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Anything you want to remember from how the revolutionary generation thought about government? Because these things are very exciting. I hope they're exciting to you. Don't worry, if they're not, this is just the first cut at all of these ideas. And I know there's really a lot to this. Like I said, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages have been written about all this. So it is kind of hard to boil it all down to one, kind of 40-minute talk. So don't worry, if it's not making sense yet, I think as we hit it a few more times from different angles, it will. Anything I can do to help you with it? Please.
It seems to me like before this, not a lot of people had united under these types of true principles, because most of them had lived under monarchies or dictatorships or whatever. There'd not been an environment where true principles could flourish like this. And it kind of started the ball rolling. And these principles are really very specifically enunciated in the Declaration of Independence.
Exactly.
And maybe that's
you can find all of this there. Exactly. Yes.
Because that's where it states that, if these principles aren't being followed, then we the people have the right to rise up and change the government.
Yes.
So that these inalienable rights will be preserved.
Yes.
And we may be willing to lay our lives on the line to make sure that it happens.
I love that. Love that comment. You can go throughout and you can find each one of these throughout the Declaration of Independence. In fact, perhaps this is just a little assignment if you're excited. Go through the Declaration and enjoy seeing the way the revolutionary generation thought about government in that great document. For today, like I said, this is just a little taste. Oh, please, Mr. Anderson.
You asked, I think, what can we do, right, to pass on some of these ideals,
Sure.
some of these attitudes. And I just think it's important for us to embrace ourselves this idea that we do, that we are actors, right, that not to be acted upon. The government does, of course, provide certain protections and certain services that are very valuable, and yet we have a voice for that. right? We're not the only voice, but we certainly have a voice, and we
Yes.
should not be passive victims of
Right.
societal, trends. We should
Yes.
have a voice to help direct and guide the ship of the United States
Yes.
and its government and its subsidiaries. So I think if we can embrace that and say, I have a voice and I want it to be heard and considered, then we'll be making a good stride in the right direction of our culture.
Thank you so much for that very wise comment. Please.
So, okay, we need to be prepared and like study the Constitution and make sure our children know about it, because when it's their chance to vote and be a voice in this nation, they need to be prepared.
What a great comment. How old are you, sir?
11.
You are an 11-year-old patriot. I love that comment. Thank you so much. I think you've been taught right by some great parents here. So thank you. Well, friends, I just want you to know, as we think about this course, really, it is a journey into the past for the sake of the future. We learn about these great principles. We learn about how the revolutionary generation thought, among many other things, so we can help the future to be better. We're not just learning these things as a matter of history, as a matter of dates or facts, events, and people identification, questions on quizzes. This is absolutely about helping principles to go down into the hearts, so that we can then act, as Mr. Anderson said so well. Anyway, this is my little daughter Mia. This is the old burial. The old granary burial ground here just near the Park Street Church and Boston Common, and right on the Freedom Trail there if you've been. Probably one of my favorite cemeteries. You can see John Hancock's buried there, and let's see, Benjamin Franklin's parents are there. He's not there, but his parents are there. Paul Revere's there. You have let's see, James Otis is there. Samuel Adams is there. The victims of the Boston Massacre are there. It is a neat. I love being here. There's a sacred feeling in this cemetery. Because of those who are there, and you can only imagine, Brigham said the spirit world is right here, and perhaps they go and hang out sometimes, and I don't know, but they could. Anyway, just about the course. So we've done just a little bit of what we might actually do in the course. Just for a moment here, is there anybody who needs to stand up? I know we've been sort of going, and this is very exciting, but would you like to stand up and we can go to the bathroom, take like a 3-minute break? And then we'll come back and just, the rest of this, we'll do some nuts and bolts. It's going to be very helpful for you in terms of knowing how to succeed in the course. Okay, go ahead. You can do the hokey pokey and turn yourself around and then use the bathroom, whatever you need. Thank you, friends. You've been a delightful class so far. Thank you. Oh, good to have you here. Where do you live? Is it recording? Oh, good, wonderful. Okay. Anyway, no, I just was saying, when I was young, I wondered how could Joseph and Sydney talk for 3 or 4 hours at a time, and now I could talk about these things with you for 3 or 4 hours at a time, but we won't do that. I know that might be hard to bear, but I hope you're having a great time, because I am, and I'm thrilled with you, and I'm thrilled to be your friend in this course as we learn history together from the Holy Ghost. Anyway, I think you know why you're here, but this course, just this PowerPoint presentation that I'm going through, it's all online. If you go to our learning management system, it's all there, so you can go back and you can view it. And, you each have the syllabus now, and really. This just kind of goes a little bit through the course. The neat thing about this course is I found as we reason and relate, it's very powerful to reason and relate through connected themes as they weave their way through history. So rather than just sort of starting at the beginning and kind of having, okay, we'll have a little bit of cultural history and religious history and political history and all these things together, we'll actually reason through themes from start to finish and create timelines within those themes, and then come back to the beginning and add another layer to help you reason. Because you'll see that if you just focus on government from the 1600s, in fact, we'll even go a little earlier, but from the 1600s to the present, you'll see different things than if it's all jumbled together with wars and cultural events and, what women are doing and, Native Americans and all this. Anyway, and so I'm very excited about this. And when I did this on campus, I had great experiences with the students who were there. Anyway, you can read all this, but essentially we have just so many wonderful things to go through together. Our themes are Restored Gospel Foundations, and then we'll go to American Religious History, American Political History, American Military History, American Cultural History, Native American History, which has some neat ties to the gospel, African American History, which brings up some wonderful principles for us. As we do these, of course, as we've been doing today, we'll use the 4Ring method. This is, as you know so well, but maybe some of those who aren't here don't. So just briefly, the research, reason, relate, record method. We'll use that throughout as we talk about these principles of the past and learn them together and feel them. And just remember, in all that we do, we are here to come unto Christ and be perfected in Him. I mean, that's why, and I want you to know that I love to talk and to learn from you and from the Scriptures and from the Holy Ghost about these true principles, because they just bring me closer to Christ, and then He changes me, makes me better than I ever could be on my own. Anyway, and that's the ultimate objective. Okay, just a little bit there. Now, in terms of homework each week, you'll see that this syllabus hopefully will be very, very helpful to you. Obviously it has lots of things, sort of the American Heritage grading standards, which are just very normal, and it has that little primary source story from Marblehead, the Massachusetts Historical Society that I shared with you about the fort, the cannon, and all that. And it has, some introduction, tells you the themes, the topics. We'll have 6 topics in the first. This is our foundations, which I think you'll just love. Talking all about, America as a promised land, the responsibility of Americans, the blessings promised to us. So many neat things. Warnings to Americans by prophets, all these wonderful things. I think you'll love it. That's how we start, and then we'll get into these different themed histories that take us from kind of the 1600s all the way through the present. And with that, we'll have topics. And so here's the thing, right? This course, is at American Heritage, where we do principles. They go down deep into the hearts, right? This course, I'll just say this very honestly, the purpose of this course is not to just talk about every little thing that you possibly could and give you identifications. This is not an AP history class where you're just going to learn like a million things and scratch the surface about a million things. The purpose of this course is to dive deep within themes, within topics that allow us to reason and relate principles that will change our life. If you want to learn about other things that kind of fill in some of the gaps, buy great books. The Lord wants us to always be learning. And so just so this I think is going to be a unique experience because of the way we're doing it. And also an experience that is a wonderful complement to other history courses that you might take, because perhaps in other history courses you may just get a lot of facts and maybe even some other events that we're just not going to cover here, and that's okay. We are going to be true to our purpose in this course, which I think I'm grateful for that, and I think you will be too. As you see us doing it. Okay, now with that said, we're not going to try all things. We're not going to try to be all things to all people. We're going to try to be great at what we do. Homework each week. If you look at the syllabus, would you turn with me to where it has the fall semester schedule? And really, I have it outlined week by week. Because remember, we only meet once a week for these 2 glorious hours. And as we meet, I will just let you know, our class will be so much richer if you have done the work to know what we're talking about that day. And that's just kind of the truth of it. Also, I'm not sure at this point how many of you are taking this course for credit versus enrichment. I welcome both. I mean, they're both wonderful. If you are here and you want to sit in and just listen and learn and reason and relate with us and enjoy, great. If you're here and you want the credit, can I just tell you this course will help you to become a great student. I'll never forget that some of my former students, they said, when I went to BYU and took American Heritage, which is a course there at BYU, they said, I was so used to thinking and researching and writing and reading because of this course. And so just can I say, if you are taking this course for credit, it will really build your muscles of scholarship and help you to become a great scholar who can read and reason and relate, who can discuss and who can write not only analytically but also creatively, who can do word studies, who can take quizzes. And can I just say, I'll just be very honest, I wanted very much to make the quizzes and the tests something that would stretch you and help you to become better. Right? Because what kind of a coach would you have if you came to the football practice and said, all right, friends, well, go ahead and lay down. I'm going to turn on the TV and that'll be practice for 2 hours today, every day. And that's all you did. What kind of a coach would he be? I want you to know I want you to work because God expects us to work, and that's how we become. So if you're taking the course for credit, I unabashedly say to you, there are amazing things to feast upon. It will take diligence. It really will take effort. But can I say, I know that if you do the right things for the right reasons in this course, you will get so much out of it. That is my observation. It's my personal experience. I mean, putting together the whole course, I want you to know that is exactly how I hope you will say, oh, boy, I'm learning a lot. I'm working hard. I'm a little sore. We've lifted some weights, right? And you feel the muscles building, right? Maybe not physically, because, I mean, unless you buy the books, those are a little heavy. But no, you can do the whole thing online, which is so nice. You can do the whole thing. It's all there. All the readings, all the assignments. You can submit them online. It's so nice. But at the same time, too, let me just say, if you like the paper copy, you can do those too. They're spiral bound, and you can bring those in your homes. You can carry those around if you go on vacation and you're away from wireless or whatever. That's totally great too. I mean, I personally love to hold things in my hand. I feel connected with my learning when I do, but I also understand the blessing of the convenience of online learning, which is just amazing. So just so you know, whatever your family wants to do is great. I support either way, the hard copies or online. It's all online. Okay, with that said, if you take a look at that fall semester schedule, you'll see week by week, because we only meet the one time, you'll have several assignments too. And you might say, oh, I've got a pre-test, and I've got a writing assignment, I've got a couple reading assignments. Yes, you do. It's a week's worth of work, and this course is meant to help us become something we'll be grateful for years down the road, not just something we said, oh yeah, that was easy. You know, I mean, just things that are really worth something come with a price. There will be a price, but a happy price. I promise you a happy price in this course. Okay. So with that said, just a couple examples for next week. Right here we are. The 25th of August. Okay. For September 1st, Restored Gospel Foundations. Okay. This is what we'll take a look at. Our Heritage of American Christian Education, both part 1 and part 2. Those are 2 topics. We'll do 2 topics each time. One the first hour, one the second hour. I'll show you a little bit more about that later. Okay. What you'll see is that the foundations pretest will be due. The pretest is just a first cut of, oh, here is a preview. Here's an overview of material that we'll cover. And my guess is you probably won't know a lot of the answers taking the pretest. Don't study for it. It's not graded. It's simply a learning method to help you become familiar. Just so you know, so don't stress about it. You know, okay, please don't worry. But take it, because it will give you that preview. Okay, and then you'll see we have the introduction, the source, the notebook, and the quiz. Okay, I'll show you what each of those will be in just a moment. But just briefly, the introduction is a little thing that I've written for you to help you understand some background. Sometimes it's an introduction. When we get to the history, you'll see some background information that I think you'll really enjoy. Then there's the source itself. So for this first unit that we do, this is the Restored Gospel Foundations unit. We'll be reading many wonderful General Conference addresses by prophets, seers, and revelators, as well as other just wonderful resources that will help us come into American history from a restored gospel perspective. Okay, just so you know, that's what it's going to be. So you'll read those, and then there'll be a little notebook assignment about it with some reasoning and recording questions, 3 of those, and some relating and recording questions, 2 of those. If you, please submit these online. Okay, even if you have the books and you can read them in your hand, it'll be so much easier for everybody just to submit them online. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. You just type your answers right in. You click on the document, and I'll show you this in a moment. You click on it, you download it, you type right in it, and then you submit it to me. I'll get it. I'll write you back. I'll say, I love what you said here. Oh, have you ever thought of this? Here's a cool scripture, or whatever it might be, just to give you some feedback on those assignments, okay? And then there's a little quiz, which is done all on our learning management system. You'll be able to get instant feedback, okay? And what you'll see is that this will just be a little start. You'll have many assignments. Don't stress. Please, just do your best continually, and you will be rewarded for your hard work. I've seen that this course rewards those who put in the effort. It absolutely does. Okay, it will reward you for doing the reading and all these other things. Okay, there'll be actually one of the questions on the test is, did you do the reading? that'll be a point because I know the reading is so substantial. Anyway, here's another one. You'll see on September 29th, we'll do American Religious History, the First Great Awakening, and then we'll do the Founders in Religion. And the source we'll look at a source from Jonathan Edwards, this wonderful preacher, as well as we'll look at some 3 sources, shorter ones from John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington. Anyway, and then we'll discuss those. Anyway, but for that week, you'll come to class having done these. There's an analytical writing assignment that comes with its own rubric, explain it, and I'll show you that in a moment. As well as a background, source, notebook, and quiz, and for each of those. Okay, so that you can find that on the syllabus. Also, we've got pre-test, post-test, and the final exam. As you take a look at those, what you'll see is they will look a lot like this. In fact, I just went and used the snipping tool. This is actually one of them. Okay, and so this is you'll log into our learning management system. Mr. Anderson can help you with all of that. In fact, I think you probably maybe already received an email if you have registered for the course with that information. If not, we can make sure you have it before you leave today. That's fine. Just you can talk to him or to me, and we can get that to you. But you'll see here's question 1: which of the following, right, are true? And you'll see they have lots of different choices. Is it 3 of the above? Is it 4 of the above? Is it all of the above? These questions are made to make you think. Okay, and that's okay. In fact, it's great. God wants us to think. Anyway, and it'll let you know, hey, here's the correct answer, okay? Or here's the right answer, and here's what you picked. So you'll get some instant feedback right from the computer, okay? Because I've already put in all the answers. Also, these introductions, okay? These are the paragraphs of background information as well as the sources. These are the primary sources, right? Such as journals, letters, books, pamphlets. Okay, and these are all excerpts, okay? These are the reading assignments. Okay, read them and then indicate that you read them on Canvas. That's our learning management system that we'll show you in a moment. And then I will monitor your progress. Okay, I'll be able to see all this. I'll give you feedback. You can write to me. I can write to you. In terms of, here's just an example. This is just one paragraph from one of our background pieces. Okay, this is actually something we have this really neat piece about different types of economies that we'll read together. Simon Patten is this theory of prosperity. Neat, anyway, but here's some background for it, and you'll see it talks about industrialization and commercialization. It talks about some of these urban centers and how they changed as a result of the change in manufacturing, et cetera. For example, by 1900, New York had grown from 1 million in 1860 to 3 million. Chicago had grown from 100,000 in 1860 to over 1 million. And other urban centers were experiencing similar growth. By 1890, the largest cities were also overwhelmingly ethnic. The population of Chicago was 87%. The populations of Milwaukee and Detroit were 84%. And the population of New York was 80% foreign-born or second generation, with more Irish than Dublin and more Germans than Hamburg. So anyway, you'll see just some really interesting information that will help you to understand the background for the primary source you read. Okay? These are meant to be helpful. That's just a little example there for you. Here's a source. Every source will come with questions to consider as you read. So you'll have some things to look for, to think about, right? As these will be your reasoning questions. And so here, this is Simon Patten, Theory of Prosperity. This really neat book that he wrote in 1902. We'll spend some time talking about it. Anyway, like I said, this is just the first paragraph of it. And these are all fairly short, meaning, 2 pages or so, page and a half. Okay, so just so you know, time for you to really dig in rather than, if you've taken the Modern World History course that I created for American Heritage, the primary sources there, some of them were, 30 pages each of, John Dickinson or something, right? Anyway, and so sometimes those were a little overwhelming. This is pared down, but you have really neat nuggets, I'd say chew on, but I guess if they're chicken nuggets, you can chew on them. Don't chew on the gold ones. But these great nuggets, okay, to enjoy, feasting upon. Anyway, but notice, in modern nations, the productive power of an economy of abundance is more than sufficient to produce the minimum of existence. There is a social surplus above the costs of production in which every worker has a right to share. And you'll see some of these sources will be sources where we'll say, oh, this is what to do. Other sources, because we are here to reason between right and wrong, truth and error, okay, will be what not to do. Anyway, so a lot of neat things to talk about there. Anyway, so they're to be free. Now, this is very interesting. To be free is to be comfortable, to have a home, and the decencies that go with it. The right to comfort is not a right to equality in the distribution of wealth, but to that income necessary to secure to the worker the best physical conditions. This was at a point in history where people would say 8 hours for work, 8 hours for play, and 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will. You say, oh, is that a right? So so it was some really neat things to start reasoning through. Anyway, this is just a snippet, literally a snipping tool. Okay, so there's a source. Other assignments, like I said, the notebook assignments, the quiz questions. Let me show you those. Here is a notebook. Once again, you download this, you type right in it. Okay. According to Patton, what effects should America's modern industrial economy of abundance have on the lives of every worker? Now, if you don't understand what an economy of abundance is right now, that's okay. That's one of the reasons why I have the background information, but it explains exactly what that is in the paragraphs. Does that make sense? So don't worry, you'll get that background. That'll be helpful to you. According to Patton, what role should comfort, leisure, and recreation play in modern industrial America? You'll be able to reason some things that he thinks. Okay. What does Patton propose that Americans should do to realize the potential of the consumer economy of abundance that is replacing the producer economy of scarcity? Talk about that. Okay. And have some really, really important things for you and for me. Anyway, so there are some notebook questions you'll get to do. And then you have the relate. And everything will be tied to one principle from the FACE. Okay, the 7 principles. This one is the Christian principle of self-government. God ruling internally from the heart of the individual. In order to have true liberty, man must be governed internally by the Spirit of God rather than by external forces. Government is first individual, then extends to the home, church, and community. How does what Patton is proposing relate to that principle? Okay, and then as well, how does the document relate to Ecclesiastes, Doctrine and Covenants, Mosiah? Okay, you'll get to go and compare and contrast and reason and relate in this step here. Write that down. Okay, so those are some of those assignments. And then you'd send those to me, I'd give you some feedback. Example of a quiz, notice, this is the quiz. I picked the wrong answer here so that you could see that you would not only pick your answer, but you'd also get the right answer. So you'd know what the correct answer is. And you get that instant feedback right on the quiz. It's all built in for you to that system. This one is a neat one about the Virginia House of Burgesses. During our political history. Timetable assignments. Remember, because we're going through themes, we'll have a lot of different timelines. We'll be able to make connections across themes as well as across decades, across centuries. I'll read these as well. Here's an example. This is just part of, you'll see some of the topics that we'll talk about. There are more down here, but I just gave you the 17th and 18th centuries. And then here are some of these questions. Notice, reason 2 or 3 vertical patterns from the cultural history column. Right? So you're like, ooh, cultural history. So we go from a Puritan family, and then we have the Society of Friends, and you'll learn about each of these things. The Spirit of 76, Noah Webster, and American language. What is all of that showing me about the patterns of principles that were employed by societies in the 17th century and 18th century? And then you'll see, if I were to show you the 19th century and the 20th century, there'd be a very, very big shift. And we would go from a society that's focused on God, on these Christian principles, and suddenly we start pulling away and we start focusing on self. We start focusing on government as the be-all and end-all. We start, anyway, all these other things. And so you can reason, I see that there's a shift here. This is kind of interesting, right? As well as horizontal patterns, okay, from these different centuries. Okay, anyway, you can talk about that. So also, here are the analytical writing assignments and the short story assignments, as well as the others. So notice I've given you a rubric for you here. Explains, topic sentence, logical argumentation, textual support, in-depth analysis, uncommon insight and understanding, concluding summary sentence, and all that. And then it explains each of those in some detail for you there. You'll get a 0 if it's missing, right? 2 for attempted, 3 for satisfactory, 4 for excellent. Okay, and you'll see here that you'll have a paragraph to reason and relate from. And in this one, you'll write about this. Evaluate Noah Webster's contributions to American identity and culture. Get to think about that, chew on it, write about it, and I'll give you feedback. Okay, you'll submit it online, and I'll give you feedback online as well. Short story assignment for those who like creative writing. Write a short story of at least 2 pages. In 2 pages, that's fine. Okay, you don't have to do 8. Demonstrating your understanding the following content from the topic. Okay, notice the other one. Okay, had both the source and the topic. This one's focused on the topic in the history, the background sections. The Puritan family as a little commonwealth. Community structure and inheritance patterns in Puritan New England. Puritanism influence on gender roles, work, and education. New England is a Bible commonwealth. Write a short story that shows me that you understand a little bit about what life was like for the Puritans. Okay, including those topics. Okay, you've got some expectations for your short story, etc. Okay, and then a word study. This is just, let's see. I see word study. Oh no. Okay. Well, the word study is very exciting. Many of you have done them before. I have lots of different parts for them that will take you through the Noah Webster 1828, that will take you through the scriptures, that will take you through the words of Latter-day Prophets. And you'll have some reasoning and relating questions. You'll be able to set goals for yourself from what you do. Anyway, this will be just, I think, a neat experience to really understand the power of words. And as you understand the power of those words, you'll get to reason and relate. I think you'll really enjoy these word studies. They're very, very powerful. Let's see. Well, with that said, so okay, so far I'm just sort of showing you a few things. Any questions? Yes.
So, next week is September 6th. So next week, are we supposed to have all these things that we're supposed to do? Are we supposed to have the introduction to all of that done by next week?
Yes. So when you come to class, those things will be due. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll just give you just a couple days later to the end of Friday. So 11:59 on Friday in case you get behind. But we really do want to encourage doing the work in a prompt manner because there will continue to be work. And one thing that I have found is sometimes if students procrastinate and they say, oh, I'll just leave it all. Well, suddenly rather than 3 assignments, you've got 6, and then the next week you may have 9, and then and then that becomes totally unmanageable, and you want to give up. So at this point, right, you'll have a few days, but we're going to cut you off, okay, at Friday 11:59, and at that point, right, you'll lose the points for those assignments, move on to the next ones, okay, and then you'll be starting with 3 fresh rather than 6 if you get behind, okay. So well, no. So that's if the work the work would be late. That would be the latest you could turn it in if you wanted to turn it in late. The work would be due by the time you come to class, if it's to be on time. Does that sound correct, Mr. Anderson? Would you like to add anything else?
So 3:29, your work is due on Tuesdays, and you should have your quiz and everything else ready already submitted. After that, it's marked late in grade book. After 11:59 on Friday of the same week, you can no longer turn it in. Just count it as lost, broken eggs. You're not going to cry over spilled milk, and move on to the next assignment. So 3 days after your class.
Right. So you have this sort of grace period where it can be late. It's still not going to be on time and have the full, but you have that late period there. But yeah. So for example, you've got if you wanted, you could start tonight or whatever you choose. But you do have theoretically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I would not encourage you to do homework on Sunday, but I will leave that to you. But I definitely would not encourage it. And then you have Monday and even Tuesday morning if you wanted. You know what I mean? So you have that time until 3:29 where it's for full credit. Turn it in those assignments as you talked about that pre-test, and then you have the 2 topics. And right now I think without knowing them, you might say, oh wait, but I think it'll all make a lot more sense as you start doing the first ones. Question.
You say that all the readings are online.
And I'll show you where to. It's so. Everything's online if you want to do it all online. You can also buy hard copy books, and it's also actually here. I brought this because I like to read it. I actually read them to my children at home when we talk about these things. But this is the American cultural history one. It has everything in it all the way from. Has a little table of contents. Has your little timetable assignment all the way from the timetable assignment and the pre-test, all the way through the post-test. And it has all the PowerPoints in it. It has, let's see, it has your, actually, let me just show you this one. There we go. It has your background. So you can say background information here about Noah Webster and the early republic. And then it has questions to consider as you read. It has your source from Noah Webster. It has your notebook questions, both the reason and record as well as the relate and record. It also has your little quiz. And so it is all in there. If you wanted to just sort of see it and hold it, it has all those things, as well as the writing assignments and the word studies and the short stories and all of that. Great question, great question. So that's what a hard copy looks like if you do prefer that, but everything is online.
And I'll send you the links to those by email. I've got the families here. And so you'll get an email today from me with links if you want to buy them. You can buy it online. We'll have them for you here next Tuesday or
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. For those who are doing this, for example, in homeschool groups, co-ops across, the United States, the PowerPoints are also online. That's all there so that, for example, a homeschool mother or the person who's running the co-op could use those PowerPoints in whatever way they want. Use parts of them, not use other parts, that sort of thing. And so you'll see that we'll go together. We've got living history where we'll have stories from places that I've been with my family to kind of give it some living color. We've got the background to talk about here. This is Melville, Herman Melville. We'll talk about the American Literary Revolution as part of our cultural history. We'll have some reasoning questions that are part of those slides there. Some seeing history where we've got some actual pictures from the past. There's the poet Emily Dickinson. Okay. Anyway, as well as we'll have relating the words of modern prophets. Wonderful quotes here. I love this one about education. This was quoted by Elder Oaks. He who invades the domain of knowledge must approach it as Moses came to the burning bush. He stands on holy ground. He would acquire things sacred, said President J. Reuben Clark, a member of the first presidency. Anyway, it just goes on. Just wonderful things. We'll relate these, okay, to what we do. Those are all in the PowerPoints as well. So these PowerPoints, I think, will be very helpful if you can look at those, but there's not an assignment associated with those. We'll use those in class, okay? Just so you know, here's an example Tuesday format. Of course, this is Utah time in terms of the times here. So notice 2 parts. For example, we do 2 topics a week because we meet once a week for the 2 hours, kind of like, an hour-long class, 2-hour-long classes, and they're together, right? So here's, if we're doing cultural history, because that, I just happened to bring that book, the first American cultural history topic and source will be from 3:30 to 4:30, and it will be broken down this way. From 3:30 to 4, reasoning and relating discussion about the history, the Puritan family. So we'll learn all about the Puritans, the Puritan family, okay? Rachel, if you were a young Puritan woman, what would you be doing? And what about your brother Gordon? What would he be doing? What did that teach us about gender roles? There's so many great discussions there about the proclamation, etc. Great principles to reason. Anyway, then from 4 to 4:30, reasoning and relating discussion about the source. This is the primary source. These are some wonderful poems by Anne Bradstreet. He wrote them about 1650. This is a Puritan woman. Anyway, and we'll go in there and we'll have that reasoning and relating discussion from the primary sources. We'll bring in quotes from the prophets. We'll talk together about the principles. We'll have our brief stretch and bathroom break, and then remind me if I get carried away. You need to, I'm sorry for not, I was going to pause. Anyway, then we'll come back. We'll have our second hour, the second American history cultural topic and source from 4:30 to 5 or so, a couple minutes here or there. Reasoning and relating discussion about the history, the Society of Friends. Okay, that'll be cultural history topic number 2. And then from 5 to 5:30, reasoning and relating discussion about the source, Robert Barclay, an apology for the true Christian divinity. Talks about the inner light, this really neat doctrine, the light of Christ essentially, and how we're all born with it, and how you treat somebody if you believe that, and this reciprocal liberty that comes from this area in the middle Atlantic states in which this great principle would be such a big part of how they would understand liberty. Anyway, we'll talk a lot more about that. With that said, that would be sort of the typical. So no, it's kind of 4 parts, history source, with a little break in between. Okay, now with that said, learning management system. Just a little demonstration here. In fact, maybe Mr. Anderson, I know he's very good on this. If you wouldn't mind just kind of navigating, I could maybe talk about it as you do. Thank you so much for that. But here's what it looks like. Well, at least this is what it looks like for me when I go in. We're using Canvas this year. You'll see everything that you need to do is there for you. You click on it, it takes you right to the assignment. You can download it, you type your responses, you upload it, you submit it. I give you feedback right online. Your gradebook's there, it's all there. So it's really convenient, very nice. Just a wonderful blessing for this. Oh, sorry. This is where, I'm so sorry, if you would be able to, thank you so much. But yeah, we'll just kind of show it to you, like I said, and like Mr. Anderson said, we'll give you the login information. Once you log in, it's really user-friendly. And they've done a nice job. I like this little icon here. Anyway, so you'll see you've got the topics and the syllabus. Oh, also to you here on on-campus class, you have the hard copy of the syllabus. Take that home, enjoy that. Also, if you click on the hyperlink, you can see that you can view the full course syllabus here. You can see everything there online wherever you are with the internet. So if you are, in Paris singing with, the American Heritage choirs, click on the internet there and you've got the syllabus. Ta-da! And there's my daughter Mia, and you're at the right place because she's walking into the old Granary Burial Ground in Boston. Okay. Anyway, so there's all of that. Some strategies for success. You can peruse these, on your own. But then here's where it's really, really nice because you'll see that if you were to say, oh, okay, I want to do, why don't we do maybe here? Let's do this one because I know your daughter asked about it. Let's do 1.1. Our Heritage of American Christian Education, Part 1, the Introduction, the Source, the Notebook, and the Quiz. If you were to click there, what you'll see is it'll bring this up here. You simply click on it. Oh, by the way, it also tells you, here's when it's due, September 1st by 3:29 p.m. Notice that's for full credit. That's when it's on time, okay? As you click on it, and then you'll just download it. As it comes up on your computer, you'll see that you have just a little introduction here talking about this kind of sort of the origin of this source. You have your questions to consider. It has the introduction, as well as the research here. Okay, and this is something that I think you'll really enjoy, talking about an American Christian education. Okay. Anyway, you'll read that, and then if we could just go down to those notebook assignments. After you read that, you'll see that here are the assignments. These are the relating assignments. You can just type right into that assignment. Type into the reasoning questions here. Adam and Eve, I love this word, etc. Okay. Anyway, what you do when you're done with that is save it. After you save it, you can then upload it, and then you'll submit it. It's with the big blue submit button right there. Submit assignment. Okay. That will then come to me. I will see them and I will grade them. Then you'll get a grade. You'll get comments from me. You can also ask me questions or make comments that you'd like, saying, "Oh, I really loved this one," or, "Hey, tell me about this on this page. What does that mean?" Okay, whatever it might be for you. Anyway, and then that's how you submit assignments, and they're all there. And so essentially, if I were you, I would look at the syllabus. If I were you, I would personally just print out the syllabus, but you don't have to. It is online, but I would print it out. I would keep it next to, my bed or wherever you like to keep it. And then I would say, okay, what's due next week? And I would look. And then I would simply start at the top of whatever's due. And then I would just go to that assignment, okay, from that main page. I would click on it. I would fill it out. I would upload it, and I would submit it. And then I would do that for each of the assignments due that week. And when I get to the last one, I'm done. Okay, and then just wait for grades. Right, and then we'll have our class together, and we'll talk about all the great things that you reasoned and related together. Any questions about how to do that? Because I know that's kind of a brief explanation. Anything else that you think would be important to share with them about how this? We could show them maybe the grade book, sure, if they wanted. But you can check all of your grades here.
Here's this Foundations pre-test that we just talked about. Again, in this case, it will tell you there's no time limit. You have 18 questions. It says it's worth 18 points, but if it's a pre-test, just know that it's actually not counted against your grade. So all of the pre-tests, even though it's worth 18 points, don't go into your grade, not one bit. So if you only get 1 or 2 right, and then at the end when you take the post-test, which is exactly the same test, maybe the questions will come in different orders, you'll be so pleased because you'll probably get many more right the second time than the first time.
You can see how much you've learned.
That's right.
So. Great. Any questions that you have? I know this is a lot of information, and can I just say, because Mr. Anderson and I have worked on creating the course as well as the way to access the course, we've kind of done a lot of talking today. Most weeks it will absolutely not be that way, and I'll just be asking questions, leading a discussion, guiding a discussion. I do apologize for doing a little bit more talking today than usual.
You might also like the calendar view. When you click on the calendar, it will show you what's due, and it looks like so much is due on Tuesday, but please know that if you just do a little bit each day, the bite-sized, kind of approach is a very helpful and very doable approach. Just an hour or half an hour a day will get you through most of this work.
Definitely. Okay. Love that. Thank you. And maybe just the grade book, if that's all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Anderson. All right, and just so you know, you can always go and see what's been graded, what hasn't been graded yet, the grades that you've received, any feedback you've received, and you can send me feedback all the time, anytime that you'd like to. Okay. Anyway, and so you'll see your personal score out of whatever the number is and how you're doing. And just so you know, there are lots of assignments. So please, if one doesn't, it's not your assignment, keep going. It's all right. Okay. Anyway, any questions? Please, Mr. Anderson.
Is it too late to recruit some other people to come to this class?
No, I think we would love for them to stay up with us. So this week would be a good time to do that recruiting. We'll probably let them have the first 10 days, or sorry, the first 2 weeks of class. So about
Thank you so much.
You can see me or you can register on.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. It's been so helpful to have you here. All right, well, let me just go back to the PowerPoint just to close out very, very quickly. I do just want you to know that, as Elder Ballard said, with all my heart, I hope and pray that you will be wise enough to learn the lessons of the past. You don't have to spend time as a layman or a Lemuel in order to know that it's much better to be a Nephi or a Jacob. You don't have to follow the path of Cain or Gadianton in order to realize that wickedness never was happiness. And you don't have to allow your community to become like Sodom or Gomorrah in order to understand that it isn't a good place to raise a family. Learning the lessons of the past allows you to walk boldly in the light without running the risk of stumbling in the darkness. This is the way it's supposed to work. This is God's plan. Father and mother, grandfather and grandmother teaching their children, learning from them, and then becoming a more righteous generation through their own personal experiences and opportunities. Learning the lessons of the past allows you to build personal testimony on a solid bedrock of obedience, faith, and the witness of the Spirit. Of course, it's not enough to learn these lessons as a matter of history and culture. Learning the names and dates and sequence of events from the printed page won't help you very much unless the meaning and the message are written in your hearts. Nourished by testimony and watered by faith, the lessons of the past can take root in your hearts and become a vibrant part of who you are. I just want to testify that I have felt those lessons start to become a part of who I am. I want them to become a bigger part of who I am. I hope you have that same desire. And I know that as we do together, the Spirit can teach us about this sacred subject, even American history. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Samuel, would you offer our closing prayer, please? Thank you so much.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are thankful that we can come to this class today. Please bless us to be able to remember the things that Mr. Gentile has taught us. We're so grateful for all the wisdom and knowledge that He has to teach us. Please bless us for the rest of the day. See what we see in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you, Samuel, and thank you all so much. Any questions that you have that you'd like to ask? Please.
How's it going to be available to watch later, to rewatch the class later?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Those things will be added right on Canvas. Is that correct, Mr. Anderson?
Right. All the videos.
Is it going to be way down the road, or is it going to be simultaneously?
About 10 minutes down the road.
Okay.
They'll be there. On Canvas and also on YouTube. We'll have some links to those as well. And so if you do miss a class, and we know that occasionally you will, you might get sick or you might have something else come up that will prevent you from being here, do know that they will be posted that same night or very early the next morning. So you'll be able to watch the recording. Also, for our online friends, we will stop when we take our break at approximately the hour mark. We will stop the recording and ask you to log into the second recording. The way that the technology works will require us to do that so we can form two different movies. And so that's what we'll do. That's very likely what we'll do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any other questions? It's truly been my pleasure to be with you today. Anything else I can do? Are you feeling, be very honest with me, are you feeling ready to start next week? Okay. Great. Is there anything I can do to help you to feel even more ready?
Just download the hard drive from your brain into ours.
Oh, no. If we did that, no one would become any stronger, wiser, smarter, better. But you will, I think, love the work to have those things go into your heart and mind.
That's the promise of the course, right? It's a long, continual download the whole way through.
It is. The course is an invitation to become something. It really is. Every week. We'll give you topics, to grapple with in the happiest of ways. And can I just say too, I highly recommend that the things that you learn in this course, that you, if you have a family that this is okay with, of course, that you talk about these things as you are in the car, as you're at the dinner table, as you're on a walk around the neighborhood, whatever it might be. There will be so many rich topics to discuss. I invite you to make this a family affair. Please.
So it's got an announcement for 10 and
Yes.
so like in a 10-year-old wants to take it, but it can't do all the homework, of course. But it's because of that, but not.
Yes. Sure. So if they're just going to take it as enrichment, is that yes, and wonderful. And we welcome both enrichment, credit seeking students both. If enrichment is the goal, what I would recommend is just focus on the reading. Focus on the reading. And then anything else that you'd like to do, of course, if you think a certain assignment will be helpful or, but the reading will be the lifeblood of the course, just like the scriptures, right? Talking about the scriptures is so much better than talking about something that talks about something that talks about the scripture. You know what I mean? So that's the source. That's where we'll go. Those primary sources as well as the background that helps you understand the primary sources.